Hey guys, Kuoku here. Dr. Ratio has certainly been a controversial point of discussion lately, not only amongst the Honkai Star Rail community, but the name of this man has echoed throughout the entirety of the gacha community at this point. Kind of lore accurate in my opinion. I don't really hear a single person within the Star Rail community complaining about getting a free 5-star limited character, right? An incredibly strong one at that, which I'm gonna prove how insanely strong he is in just a moment. However, the thing is, I've been seeing a lot of copium and toxicity recently around the fact that every Star Rail player is getting Dr. Ratio for free. And to these toxic people, I'm here to say, L plus ratio. Okay, to be fair, it's not a lot of people, it's probably a vocal minority as it usually is, but to be specific, I've heard a couple people outside the Star Rail community saying things like, he's gonna be bad because he's free, they wouldn't give us a free 5-star if he was good. Well, today, I'm here to lay these claims to rest and answer this basic question. How good is Dr. Ratio? We'll also be covering everything there is to know with his kit, now that we've gained some new insight and new information. Thanks to the release of 1.6, we of course got a new Trailblaze mission. With this, we got to trial Dr. Ratio, giving us a peek at his numbers, multipliers, traces, eidolons, etc. And let me tell you, his damage is no joke, guys. It is just insane. Now, I'm not talking about in the trial, because obviously they're going to make the character look good in the trial so that they can sell more on the banner, right? I'm actually talking about over here on Prydwen. They perform these damage calculations. It's a simulation, basically it's just math. It's not in the game or anything, but it is a great indicator of performance. Just keep in mind that day-to-day gameplay has a lot of different variables, and these simulations are performed in basically a bubble. So take it with a grain of salt, don't take it too seriously, it's mostly just for fun. But I couldn't just ignore these damage numbers in these calculations. These numbers are just nuts. And also keep in mind that this is in single target scenarios specifically, since his kit is purely single target. But what is this insane damage? Okay, 2 million at E6, that just blows my mind. Just as a reference point, when we compare this to Jingliu against single targets, who is kind of considered our premier damage dealer right now, she doesn't even hit 1 million at E6. Even Daniel, not even 1 million, that's just absurd. That is just absurd, guys. He literally ratios everyone in damage in single target. And comparing this to Zila as well, just look at the difference here. At E0, Dr. Ratio's damage is double Zila's. I also want to be fair to Zila and just say that in single target scenarios, she can't really trigger her resurgence talent, so she loses a lot of value there and a lot of damage. But Dr. Ratio doesn't have conditions like that. His damage is just straightforward, aside from needing to put those debuffs on the enemy if you don't want to play the RNG game. Regardless though, his damage is just crazy. Okay, now we should talk about the other perspective and come back down to earth just a little bit. I do want to make the point that a lot of the current content is multiple targets, like elites with mobs and things like that, so his viability may not be as widespread as a unit like Jingliu or others, even though his damage is nothing to scoff at for sure. And Jingliu and Daniel will probably have more content that they'll excel at, but Dr. Ratio will be a nice niche option for certain content like single target bosses or even 2 boss scenarios, for specifically the ones that don't summon any extra mobs. And for single targets, his damage is still higher than Jingliu and Daniel in their 3 target scenarios, where they shine the most, being destruction units. I am really eager to play this character now. I want to fully test him out in game because these calculations are crazy. I keep saying that, I don't know how else to describe it. I just can't wait for everyone to get this character, and I do mean everyone, by the way. I still can't believe that he's free. But anyways, I don't know if this is enough to dethrone destruction as the top tier path at the moment, but who knows, maybe Dr. Ratio is here to power creep the entire game, because if everyone's getting him, then that sets a new baseline damage standard across the board. But we'll have to wait a few weeks until he's actually playable, so we can fully test him out in game and see if these calculations actually translate to the real game. So that pretty much answers our first question, but there's still a lot more we have to cover in this video. So who are his best teammates, what are the details of his kit, and how do you build him? The specific numbers and descriptions of Dr. Ratio's eidolons, traces, and just his overall kit can be found on Prydwen. I'm not going to go into specifics here. If you haven't played the story mission yet, you can also, once you get to trial him, you can open up the menu and see his details there. His kit is extremely front-loaded, meaning he doesn't need to build up for a burst of damage like other DPS units, namely Jingliu and Danheng, that kind of thing. Since his kit is purely single target, of course he's going to struggle with AoE scenarios or multiple mobs, but based on the current content we have in the Memory of Chaos, I would imagine stages with 2 elites that don't summon mobs would be his optimal use case, since he'll probably struggle against bosses that have a summoning mob mechanic. So there are 2 obvious synergies that I see for Dr. Ratio, and one of them is going to be the queen of debuffs herself, Silverwolf. Dr. Ratio's follow-up attack chance increases with the number of debuffs on an enemy by 20% per buff, and it starts at a 40% fixed chance. So put 3 debuffs on that enemy, it's a 100% chance to trigger the follow-up attack. All 3 of Dr. Ratio's major traces are centered around debuffs and give him a number of buffs depending on those debuffs. But it's clear that debuffs are going to be crucial to team building with this character. Silverwolf, also being single target, synergizes perfectly with Dr. Ratio's kit, who is also a single target, so they can focus one boss together and then move on to the second one. On that same note, Pela and Welt are potentially other great teammates to pair with Dr. Ratio to apply those debuffs and trigger his follow-up attacks. I also want to note that dots do count as debuffs, in case you didn't know. So the other obvious synergy is going to be Topaz, of course, the premier follow-up DPS. Her stocks are certainly on the rise. She is probably the top pick for those looking to maximize Dr. Ratio's viability, and for obvious reasons, of course. So while the follow-up attack spam definitely won't be infinite, you won't be able to do like Numby, Dr. Ratio back and forth infinitely. It doesn't work like that. There's probably going to be some sort of cap on it, but Topaz still has a plethora of things in her kit that synergize seamlessly with Dr. Ratio. Both are single target, Topaz has the proof of debt debuff, follow-up attack damage increase, etc, etc. The list just goes on and on, plus the fact that Dr. Ratio's high follow-up attack frequency advances Numby's action value. These 2 are just going to go crazy together. It makes me wish I had picked up Topaz during her banner. I'm kind of sad about that. I'd love to try these 2 out together, and then slap Ruan in there. You have the perfect dual DPS comp right there. This could be the final nail in the coffin to end the hypercarry meta, but who knows? It's probably not the case, but it's possible. And speaking of Ruan, of course, she is another teammate synergy that might not be as obvious. Aside from the fact that Ruan can be used with virtually anyone, her weakness break efficiency buff paired with Dr. Ratio's extremely high toughness bar damage can make for a great team. His toughness bar damage on a single target is one of the highest in the game, so with Ruan, obviously that's going to be even higher. Bronya and Tingyun, other obvious choices, universal supports. Now in terms of sustain units, Kuoku is going to provide the biggest damage increase out of all the sustains due to her energy regeneration and attack buff, while still offering a good cleanse and good healing. Then Fu Xuan is another great option for a sustain. She has crit buffs and is easily the best sustainer in the entire game. There's nothing better than not having to worry about getting a one shot. Locha and Lynx are also good options, but at the end of the day, just go with whatever sustain you want. There really isn't any standout options that benefit Dr. Ratio significantly, so any sustain is going to work. Now I want to quickly give you guys an idea of Dr. Ratio's build, that way you can prepare when you get him. So if you're not picking up his signature light cone, cruising in the Stellar Sea S5 is going to be an amazing option, as we saw with those damage calculations that were using that light cone. And this is the free Hertastore light cone that everyone could get for free just by playing the game. Another great option, Topaz's light cone, if you were the lucky one and got that, looks to be a great fit for Dr. Ratio because of the follow-up attack buffs as well as the crit bonus. According to the calculations, this is going to be the best option I think for him besides his own light cone. But another great option if you don't have the Hertastore light cone or Topaz's light cone is going to be the 4-star Only Silence Remains at S5. And finally, Swordplay is a universal hunt path light cone. If that's your only option, you can go with that. And for Relics, now don't be tricked into thinking that, well, he's a follow-up character, so just put the follow-up set on him. No. Actually, we have yet another quantum set abuser, if used with a support that has a defense decreasing buff like Silverwolf or Pela. Otherwise, Wastelander of Banditry is going to be the best option, the imaginary set. Or a 2-piece Grand Duke with 2-piece Banditry is another great option for him. You can also get away with the Musketeer set It's just a general, universal, good DPS set. And then for planar relics, depending on which set you have the best relics for, that's all it comes down to. You can use Frontline Glamoth, Space Sealing Station, Inert Salsado, or Rutilant Arena. All will achieve a pretty similar damage output, so whatever stats you need, just use that set. Overall, I see a ton of potential in Dr. Ratio's character. I really can't wait to get my hands on him, along with everybody else. Now that I've got my Ruan Mei complete, I think it's time to get my hunt materials farmed up and ready for the second half of 1.6. Honestly, I would strongly recommend you all do the same, because you're gonna want to build this character. Even if you don't have Topaz, even if you don't have Ruan Mei, just trust me, you're gonna want to build this character. I'm super excited. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for Dr. Ratio, and how do you plan on using him? How are you gonna build him? Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more Honkai Star Rail content, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.